about the thumbs thing.
Yeah. Hey, everybody, it's Mac with Veterans Achieve Business Systems. Today we have Cathy Reilly as our featured speaker. I'm sure she'll tell you she is the queen of the cat herders. Uh, I want to make sure I get the tags proper as we move forward. This is going to be fun. Cathy and I am on her weekly call, which is an hour before mine, and she talks about all forms of communication. And so often, and I'm sure she'll enunciate this, is communication is not just words. It's the silent communication, looking people in the eye, and the nonverbal communication. So, Cathy, thanks for doing this. I know how busy your schedule is. For a while I was trying to keep up to what city and country you were talking in. And I said, I can't keep up to my own schedule, let alone her schedule. So,
Well, thank God I'm speaking in New York tomorrow, but it's via Zoom. So I got that going for me.
yeah. It's a nice world that we're in with Zoom once you learn how to do it.
hmm It makes that connection so much easier.
Yeah. So anyway, what we're trying to do with Veterans Achieve Business Systems, um, we focus on the men and women that were in the military or soon to get out of the military. We added LEOs, law enforcement, and first responders to the package because these are men and women that at a young age said, I want to do something to help my community and my country. And they get in, and their retirement packages are somewhat similar. You don't have to stay in, um, for 20 years or 30 years, but the guys that do, and my son was in this position. He was much better Marine than I was. He stayed in for 22 years. He went in at 17. Um, and when he got out, he said, Dad, what do I do? Yeah, I have a pension, but I know that it's not enough to live forever. You've taught me that. And I said, well, you can go back to school, you can work for a corporation. The boss may put his 19-year-old son as your supervisor. You'll probably punch him in the throat. And you can go to work for yourself. You'll work harder. You'll be doing emails at midnight, and you still get to take the trash out. But you can show up at your kids' functions at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Thursday, and you may be the only father in the audience. So, trying to help these men and women that have served us, how do you survive? And quite honestly, being in sales for over 50 years, communication to me is right at the top of the list. If you don't know how to communicate, doesn't matter if you're being a salesman, you're being a CPA or a lawyer or any other chosen profession, you got to be able to know how to communicate. So I'm going to let you work your magic.
Thank you. Let's go. You guys ready? So I have a question for you, of course, because I always lead with a question because I think I want to get the noodle working. So let me ask you this. Have you ever said something and been completely misunderstood? Anybody, let me see some happy fingers. You ever, yeah, said that? Oh, yeah. So I gotta tell you, so let me take you back. It's June 21st, 2003. We're talking Key West, Florida. Anybody been to Key West, Florida? Oh, all right. The day started beautifully. It was a little bit of rain and then the sun came out and it was glorious. And if you've been to Florida, you've got those trees and the flowers and everything. It was beauteous. It was just beauteous. I'm telling you, everything was wonderful. And it was my wedding day. So it was an even better day. So June 21st, the longest day of the year. And keep in mind, I live in Colorado. So I planned a Key West wedding in 2003 online by phone. Now, the internet wasn't, Google didn't exist, right? There were no Google reviews, there was no Yelp, there was no nothing. This was, you did have a website, right? So it was a lot of dialing and calling and figuring stuff out, talking to people. Phone interviews, all that good stuff. I got pictures on the website, but I did it all like the longhand way, right? Just having, and honestly, I had no idea what I was getting. None, because I took people at their word, right? And I am a very organized person. So my background, I spent 25 years in litigation, working with attorneys in the courtroom, right? Where we had to tell a story in a very short period of time to the jury, so that the jury looked at our client and said, "Yes, I believe you." So, anal retentive girlfriend here, right? I am all about organized. I know all about contracts, everything written. I got my poop in a group. I had everything going. It was perfect. The guests started arriving. The scene was set. It was great. And the guests were also, we got married under a gazebo, but it was at the end of a pier. So it was literally, we were standing on the ocean. It was beautiful. And the really cool thing about the gazebo was that it had, I'm doing the propeller thing, the fans. They had the fans, which my husband dressed in a suit. And did I tell you it was June in Florida? So he's dressed in a suit. The fans were just, oh, it was wonderful. So the ceremony was short. We do our vows and we go inside to the hotel into our room. And everybody's happy. I mean, we're only talking 40 people. It was very small, destination wedding, and we were just beaming. It was a wonderful day. We walk through the doors and everybody's coming. They're taking their seats, they're going to the bar and all that. And I see it and I stop. And everybody's busy, bustling, giving hugs and kisses, and my eyes are just locked. My sister's the only one that noticed, and she came over and she's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Look." She's like, "What?" And I'm like, "The cake." And right then and there, I had this little playback in my head of the conversation and the contract that I wrote and faxed, because we faxed back then. I faxed it. I could see the contract. See it. Yellow cake, ivory, cream cheese frosting, raspberry casata filling. Because casata, you got to do casata fillings for weddings. I don't know about you, but that's just it's something that happens in the Novicki household. That's my maiden name. That's my family name. And I looked at it, and this is what I got. Prettier pictures, this one. So I froze. My sister looks at me and goes, "What?" And I said, "Yellow cake, ivory, cream cheese frosting, raspberry casata." And she giggled, went to the bar, got me a drink, brought it over. And I'm like, "Okay." And we proceeded on. Now, mind you, it was the best damn cake I've ever tasted. However, the lesson was learned. No matter how many times you can think you know that you're communicating effectively, it doesn't always happen unless you follow through and bridge the gap. So, it taught me a lesson also about trust, because the thought is, do you think I'm ever going to use that place again? Studies show there is a percentage of workplace errors that are based on miscommunication. Put in the chat, if what do you think it is? We go from 1 to 100%. What do you think is the percentage of workplace errors that causes issues? 82, 25, 10. I'm loving it. Thank you for participating. Thank you for playing with me. And the answer is 70. 70% of the problems within the workplace come because of a miscommunication. And guess what? In the medical industry, it's up to 86%. The problems that happen within the medical industry happen because of miscommunication. It's crazy. Most communication failures don't happen because people aren't speaking. It's happening because people understood. I'm sorry, they assume they are understood. Now, that assumption, what does that do to trust? What does that do to trust? Like I said, do you ever think I'm going to order that cake again? Because even if you think about it or use that company again, I said yellow cake. What did I say Big Bird yellow? Did I give even a yellow? Yellow is a very generic word. Now, yeah, my friends made it look pretty by adding the flowers to it. That was not supposed to happen. But they looked at it and going, "Oh, I don't think she's going to like that." And they took care of it for me. But trust was broken. I'm never going to use that place again. It did taste really good. I will say that. And then when this happens at work, it impacts workplace cultures with your teams, right? Your relationships, all of that. Trust is broken because it's not automatic. It's built one conversation at a time. And the challenge is this: what we say is not always what they hear. And then in military environments, for all of you who have served, you know that now you also have the habits that you need to apply to the mix. Because in the military, you don't question. In the military, you don't ask. You're not encouraged to ask any questions. You are to follow orders. You are to execute. Am I right? See, and while I've never served, my family has. And even my dad was boots on the ground at Kent State University when that happened. So, and he still doesn't want to talk about it. But civilian life is different, and entrepreneurial spaces are different. And when you're out networking and you're building relationships and you're trying to build clients and prospects, you need to have the ability to ask questions to gain clarity in order to build that trust. Questions are not weaknesses. Questions are not challenging authority. Questions are the means to an end to gain clarity, and it's that clarity that builds trust. So today we're going to cover the 3 layers of communication. And we're going to teach you how to bridge that gap so that you can build trust. Does that sound good? Let me see some happy fingers. Are we liking this? Oh, I love you. Thank you for playing and giving me the happy fingers. So there's 3 layers of communication. It's what's said, what's heard, and bridging the gap. So let's talk about what's said. Not everybody's in your brain. Okay, people, they do not have the experience that you bring to the table. You are a very unique person. You're very unique. Your words mean everything to you. And we speak in our own love language. We speak in the words that make sense to us. But keep in mind, we all have different personality styles. We all have different communication styles. We all have different things that motivate us. And so while we understand everything that we're saying, doesn't mean it's heard, doesn't mean it's understood. So knowing, first of all, what is said, what is meant and said. So I'm speaking my truth. I am telling you, we're going to go A.B.C. This is what's going to happen. We're going to rock and roll. We're going to have a great time. Okay, that's what's said. That's layer 1. Layer 2, it's what's heard and understood. You said A.B.C., but I heard C.D.E. Because of the words and my perspective and the way I process information, I filter things out based on, because the way our brain handles, we cannot handle all of the stimulation that's happening at any given time. We can't. We automatically filter things out because of assumptions that we've made in our past on any given situation. So we're like, then we think, oh, we know what's going on. We tie in our past experiences, our past conversations, the past projects, we tie that all in together and we're like, yeah, great. I know what's going on. Let's go. But in reality, you said ABC and I'm thinking DEF. Huh? So how do we bridge that gap? And that is by asking questions. The thing that a lot of people don't like to do. They don't like to do it. I gotta tell you, my dad's old school. He hates it when I ask questions. And then I will say something, well, do you know exactly what they meant? And he's like, no. And I'm like, well, how do you think you're gonna understand what they mean unless you ask questions? He's like, shut up. We got our parents love and hate us, don't they? But bridging the gap is asking clarifying questions. To say something as simply like, okay, does this make sense to you? Sure. Repeat it back to me. What is the next step that you got to do? So this is where the juicy thing, that it's the responsibility of both parties or all the parties that are in this, whether it's a team meeting, right? And I do this a lot in leadership trainings where I'll say, okay, you're the team captain. You're having this conversation. You know, you've got your agenda and all this stuff, and everybody's got their tasks. So what do you do as team captain? You say, okay, everybody, we're going to go around the room. We're going to take 30 seconds and say, what's the one thing that's our top priority that we're going to do? Boom, 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 boom. It doesn't take a lot of time, but it forces us to all get on the same page because then we can correct when there's an error. But don't automatically assume that everybody knows what I want you to do. Think yellow cake, ivory, cream cheese frosting. My problem was probably the order in which I shared that. But still, but still, there was a breakdown in communication. I didn't think it was, I didn't think it was a problem, but it clearly was. So the responsibility of bridging that gap falls on everyone. Falls on everyone. You need to understand that if you want to build trust, you've got to showcase it as well. You know, we're all different. We process information differently. We think differently. Some of us are big picture and some of us are details. So there's a funny story with that. My darling husband, I call him Prince Charming, and he's one of those that thinks big picture a lot. So we would have conversations, and I swear to God, this would happen at 6 a.m. as we're getting ready in the morning, and he starts talking about, you know, we need to make an appointment for the dog, or we should schedule that, we need to plan that vacation. We need to do this, we need to do that. And I'm like, so he's big picture, I'm literal. So you start telling me things to do, and I'm making the checklist. What do I need? I'm getting a shower. Like, I'm getting ready for work. I can't think about this right now. Let's think about it when we can. And that would lead to so many fights within the early years of our marriage because it took me a while to figure out he's just processing big picture, talking the talk because he's an attorney, he likes to talk. So he's just talking, but I'm one of those like, you know, what's for dinner? I don't know. Let's go figure out. Let's go plan the dinner. Let's go eat. Like it's that. So knowing that about us, I was able to adjust and we've been happily married for 20 some years now. But your prospects, your teams, the people around you in your organizations, in your communities, they all think differently. They all have different communication styles. They all have different values, right? They all have past experiences that make them think about any given situation in a particular way that's not going to be the same as you. If I were to say, I'm going to hire you today to paint the wall behind me red, throw a red in the chat. Tell me what red would you pick? apple, scarlet, American red. I love it. Thank you for playing. I was actually thinking like a wine, a Cabernet. So, yeah, you none of you would be hired. So it's asking the follow-up questions in order to get onto the same page. Bluish red from that is such a she's bringing out her Crayola crayon box here because we got the 199 colors. I love it. I love it. So here's the thing that happens. When we make assumptions that we understand what the other person needs, wants, is asking for, we are making, and we all know this, we are making an ass out of you and me. Okay, that's not how you build trust within business. We've got to step into that curiosity, right? This is where it's not necessarily about courage, but it's about being truly curious as to what do you need? What do you need from me? What do you need in your business? How can I best help and support you? What is it? Talk to me about that. So you've got to ask questions and just get curious. You're not challenging. You're not showcasing weakness. You're showcasing curiosity in order to gain that clarity. So saying questions like, so if I hear you correctly, you are looking to whatever. So if I understand, you want this. You need me to this. And just to be clear and make sure we're on the same topic or we're on the same page, let's, right? It's a matter of reiterating because here's the thing again about communication. You say A.B.C., I say DEF, but guess what? They are the same thing. They could be the same thing. We're just using different words to describe it. But we're never going to know that unless we get curious and ask that confirming question. So can you give me questions like, can you give me more details around that? Can you explain a little bit deeper what you mean by that? Just go into more details for me, please, just so that we're on the same page. Now, I spent 25 years in litigation and early in, so I was about year 10, I worked with a group of people here in Denver, and this was a large team that came into our company, and they worked with Quest, US West, all the telecom, all of that. So I was working with this team. They were new to the firm, I was new to them, and so we're trying to figure out a team of three amazing gentlemen. Loved working with these guys. The one that was the kingpin, for lack of the cat herder, right? So I remember working with him early on because he was leading the meetings. And it would ask to do dot 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 dot, right? He needed this done and this done and this done. And so I would go back and everything to him was always a priority. Let me say that again. Everything to him was always a priority. So I'm doing this and this and this, that. Yeah, that's your priority. I'm doing this. Yeah, that's your priority. Okay. Everything I'd shoved aside and I would do, get it all done. Get it back to him. I can't tell you how many times I get it to him, get it to go to his office to give him what he asked for, and he was already gone. And I was like, I thought this was a priority. And his secretary, Vivian, and I became very good friends, best friends. And she's like, yeah, it is. He'll be back tomorrow at whatever. And I'm like, okay, okay. And so we started coming up with questions like, because his name was Ray. I said, okay, um, it's a priority. You need it when? Is this Ray time or real time? And I mean, we made it funny because why not? It's a stressful situation, right? We've got millions, if not billions of dollars on the line. These deadlines are real. It's insane, right? We've got a lot of stuff. But the reality is, his idea of a priority was I need it first thing when I'm ready to receive it. But that receiving is not when I get, so I got to go back there and put everything aside and crunch on it for the next hour and then get it back to him when he's already gone. That happened multiple times to the point where I'm like, time out. Okay. So then I would start asking ray time or real time? And he would giggle and he's like, what does that mean? And I said, well, let me explain to you what just has happened. And he's like, oh, okay. He's like, I like that. No, that's ray time. So, and I'm like, okay, so when do you need it by? Well, I've got this meeting, Tuesday, whatever it is. So gaining that clarity and making and get curious, like what's going on and being open to having that conversation to figure out the details and the minutia of what's going to be my insanity or my sanity, quite honestly. So asking questions. So let's recap. Okay, true communication leads to trust in three different layers, right? It's what's said and what's meant. It's what's heard and understood. And then it's bridging the gap between them with curiosity and questions. And the reality is, most of us do not bridge that gap. Most of us don't. That's why we're seeing 80%, 70, 80% of problems in corporate America today because this is not happening because people are not bridging. And that's quite honestly why I have a job. And I'm going into corporations and doing a lot of team trainings. Because how do we bridge that gap? And it's stepping into curiosity and asking questions. And right now, I got to tell you, we're in a trust recession. We truly are. Humans are struggling to communicate with each other. Clear communication is gone. It's gone to hell in a handbasket, right? Because people are not being purposeful with the way they're communicating. They don't know how to agree to disagree. And they don't know how to be curious to understand someone else may have the same perspective on any given situation. There are multiple paths that's going to get us somewhere. And I said, this would be a great time to bring up my roll. Have you guys seen me with my roll of toilet paper? So pretend I have a roll of toilet paper right here. Okay. And then is it going to be hung over this way? Is this the flap, right, for the roll of toilet paper? Or does it go this way? Is this the flap? Is it over, or under? Okay, I got most people saying over. Well, here's the thing. We can all be in disagreement about this, and I know there's lots of us that are in a disagreement about this. And we're very passionate about it. It's the funniest thing how many people are seriously passionate about this. And they will go in and they will change other people's toilet paper rolls to get it to the right way. They'll do that. They feel like they have to. The truth is, two things. One, the first thing is we all want the same thing, and the goal is to get a clean backside. At the end of the day, we all want that. And two, we can honestly say we can agree to disagree without being mean, disrespectful, and punching each other out. I mean, come on now. You can tell I haven't thrown a punch in a while. I just went like this. So we don't it doesn't have to be that big of a deal. I can you okay, you're over. I think you're wrong. I'm just gonna go change it the next time I'm in your toilet, your bathroom. And just learn to agree to disagree. Now, before I open it up to any questions, because I know you're going to have some questions because that's what communication is all about. I wanted to let you know that I actually created a resource for you for people who are leaders who own that space. Whether you're working with other people, your teams, all of that, and I created a resource of different questions that you can ask. It's a fun little downloadable. Looks like this, right? And these are some strategic questions that I do trainings on, and it's my gift to you. I want you to have this so that the next time you're in a meeting, the next time you're out networking, the next time you're trying to lead your team or your family, quite honestly, to get to that next step, to get on the same page, that these are some questions that are very, very popular and work very, very well. So my gift to you is you can find it at freegiftfromcathy.com, and I will put the link into the chat in just a minute. But this is my resource. It's called what was it? It's called the questions to ask. So honestly, it's good to have things. I don't know if you are one of those. I love have things in writing that I can refer back to. And I put things posted over there that I just have a nice little resource. So this is something that I created for you. You can download it, print it out, keep it. It's all good. It's my gift to you. And it's a great resource on questions that actually work when you're working with other humans, which we all do. And we want to build that know, like, and trust. So with that, I would like to open it up for questions.
Well, thanks. Cathy, one of the things that I love about the time that we get to spend together, and that tied into your group meeting and stuff, is I am reminded of so many what I call life lessons in communication, and that which for me has always been a very important aspect of it. Unlike you, I'm not trying to be on a stage with 10,000 people. It was, a person here, maybe a group, if I was at a counter and three people would walk up at the same time during a trade show. But you say so many things that are truly gold, and that asking the question, not being afraid to confirm what you believe you heard.
Yeah.
And I would use those exact words. If I hear you correctly, then you are saying to me this, and this. And I expect them to say, no, I didn't say that. What I said was blah, blah, this, dot, this, and that. But you shouldn't be offended or intimidated because somebody is changing what your perception was, because the whole point is to get it accurate, no matter
Yeah.
what it is that you're trying to communicate.
Beautifully said. Thank you, Mac. And that's so true. It's just I don't know anybody that has ever been on the receiving end of one of my questions other than my father. Just because it was me asking a question and didn't matter the question at any given point in time. That's just the way dads work. But has been on the receiving end that didn't appreciate the clarification. To say, so what I hear you saying is da 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 da, right? And they're like, well, almost. Usually that's the response I get. Well, almost is this and this and this. And I gotta tell you, it works for here. It also works when you're pitching yourself. Like I've sat down with different corporations where we're creating um projects to come in and do trainings. And it's often it's like, well, what do you do? And I'm like, but what do you need? And they're like, well, what do you and we're doing this whole thing. And I'll be like, well, I gotta tell you, when it comes to communication, one size doesn't fit all with 80% of the problem. So I'll go into all of that. So, where are the top things that you're struggling with? And he'll go into the top things that they're struggling with, right? And then we'll move from there. And I said, okay, so if I hear what you're saying is that, these are the top things that you want to focus on. And guess what? We're talking long-term training. We're talking, this is how you build trust. And honestly, this is how you build a business because you cannot serve what isn't needed. You can't solve a problem that's not there. And the only way to understand the problem that is there is by gaining the clarity. And that comes with just curiosity. So, and you can even use the words, I'm really curious. You guys write this one down. Write this one down. Talk about deflating any given situation. Start any question with, I'm just curious. And it's like, can you explain that a little bit more? Hey Kathy, you really suck today. Well, okay. I'm really curious. Can you explain? Tell me more. How did I suck? Right? I deflated the situation when somebody could have been, getting real snotty and their goal might have only been to get a reaction out of me. But if I sit there and turn around and say, "Oh, okay, thanks. I'm curious. Tell me more. Tell me more." So I'm curious, tell me more. And it all comes from asking questions. And honestly, be curious. Don't be afraid of curiosity. We were amazingly curious when we were kids. And we lost that as we grew older and were told no, 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 and boundaries were set. But they were not meant to be set on our intellectual capacity to learn about each other. Any other thoughts, questions? Ooh, let me put my stuff in the chat and I'll look at the chat because I haven't been looking at the chat too much.
Hey, Cathy.
Yes, ma'am.
Um, Earlier, before you really got into your talk, you were talking about the statistics, the 70%. Was that the 70% of communication miss failures, or I forgot what the statistic
Okay,
was.
so there were two
Repeat.
statistics we were talking about. So thank you for asking that question. So the one is verbal and nonverbal communication. So we were talking earlier at the onset, I think before recording started, that communication is less than 10% verbal. The rest is nonverbal communication. Now, the studies as far as communication breakdowns in the workplace
Yeah.
that causes problems is between 70 and 80%. And it sits at about 80. I wanted to say it was 86% for even in the medical industry. So if we just rounded it, right, between the numbers, just to say 80% of the problems, on average, 80% of the problems within the workplace, whether it's, a job 9 to 5 a building, or whether it's within an organization, 80% of the problems come from miscommunication because people think and assume they understand what the other person meant and did not ask that clarifying question. So step 3 is critical. Yeah, especially if you work in like the medical industry and things where livelihoods are on the line, is bridging that gap. So did that answer your question?
Yes, I just want to make sure I was clear on what you said. Thank you.
You're
Steve,
welcome.
Cathy, I would like to know your source of the 70 to 80% miscommunication.
Oh, let's see.
Claude,
Because I
No.
might use that in my speech.
Let me see. I don't know if I transferred it to my notes. I didn't transfer. So what we can do, we can ask Sparky.
Huh.
So let's see. Talks. Hi, Sparky. I referred to a study that talked about workplace miscommunication occurring between 70 and 80%. Can you please give me a couple of the resources on those that we talked about? It's thinking.
All right.
Beginning of communication, think first.
Okay. So there's the Holmes report. Oh, that one talks about it costing 60 million a year. Wait. Project management. No. Human resources. It's you're not doing what I'm asking you to do. Um,
Miscommunication.
yep, and it's operator error. So I'll tell you what, I will find it and I will get it to you.
Okay.
I'll
Thank
find the
you.
resources because there was two studies that I saw.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't put the links in my talk, in my notes.
Okay.
Well, and I think that's one of the important parts of communication now. When 15 years ago, maybe not even that long, we could make a claim of a statistic and people didn't have the resources of following up immediately to what that resource is. So communication, and that comes back into the trust factor, is that we have to be accurate when we are communicating.
Yep, we do. And that's one of the things that I coach on and I teach on is that every time you give a stat, like, and I, you've got to be valid. And if it was back from, 20 years ago, you got to talk about. And that's what the statistic that 7% of communication is words. There's been studies since that still talk about 10%. So it's 7 to 10%, which is why I play with that now. But that study is pretty old. But you've got to trust but verify is something that I, as a litigator for 25 years, trust but verify. And I have taught my AI that I don't want anything that he said, she said. Don't give me anything that's been tweeted or social mediaized or anything like that. What I want is studies, Harvard business, that Forbes. I want all of that. So I want verified. I'm a psychology. I have a psychology degree, neuroscience, all that stuff. Everything I want feeded from that perspective because I've written abstracts, I've done things like that. So I've taught my AI to only give me that. And I don't often cite it specifically because nobody gives a shit. Because that's what I'll tell you. It's good for you to know that you verified it, but half the time your audience doesn't give a shit. They really don't. But if I can say a recent study has said, or if I'm talking with business, like Harvard Business Review said, right? There's a time where that's appropriate, but there are other times. So thank you for calling me on that. And I will, I
You
gotta dig it out again.
you have Steve's contact information?
I do.
Okay.
Mhm.
Any other questions for Kathy? I know an hour is not long enough, Kathy.
Well, I didn't want to talk for an hour. I wanted this to be interactive and I wanted to do all that. So
Well, and I appreciate the fact because even at my age and after 50 some years of being in business and learning how to communicate in the realm of what I did, calling on retailers or end users of professional photo equipment, learning the new forms becomes so important. And we have to work at it. And it is a two-way street. Just because you know how to communicate and you're talking to me and I don't know how to communicate, we're not going to have that meeting of the minds unless we get to a focal point that is similar.
yeah.
And I think we can all take that no matter what it is that we're trying to accomplish within our business. Hopefully communication is something that we're all desiring and we're not wasting each other's time.
So I think I've got this healthcare safety research, the Joint Commission. That's not the one I looked at either. I'll find it.
Any last minute questions, tidbits, nuggets, gold mines for Kathy?
Well, the example of the validity of that is, for instance, Mac in guessing 82%, that it is indeed a high number.
It is, and I think that most of us don't recognize that.
Mhm.
And if I always practice, and Maggie and I've talked about this, everything's practice until the perfect opportunity comes along, and then you're prepared. When I go out and we were talking about the grocery store issue, I I practice on people at the store all the time. I saw a guy with, and he looked like Greg Allman and he had an Allman Brothers t-shirt. And I listened to them before the Eat a Peach album, before Dwayne died. And I started teasing him. I said, "Where's Cher?" And he cracked up and we started going back and forth. And we're standing there in the salad aisle telling Allman Brothers stories. I'll never see him again but for that moment, we were communicating. And I think that we should all try to grasp that, when we're talking, and how do we, with a group that we know, develop that relationship that I trust what Cathy says. I call her on a lot of stuff when we're doing it, but I know that she's about 95% accurate, unless she disagrees with me.
Well, and he did and he called me on it today because words matter, and I wasn't clarifying. No, I wasn't
It was the
clear.
jar,
I wasn't
the full
clear,
jar.
yeah,
Yeah.
with what I was saying, and I was talking about how trust. If you think of trust like a jar, right? And then we kind of trust people right away, but what we're doing is we're putting little pebbles in, right? And as each little thing that people do, they say, they act, they show up, they walk the walk, they give a compliment, they say something nice, that all of those adds to the pebble jar. And there's a woman, I see her face, but I can't think of her. Very, very popular. She's got tons of books all over the place. Did TED Talks on shame. She was big on talking about shame.
Brene Brown. Brene Brown.
Yes. Yes. And so she talks about how trust is built and you just keep putting it until you fill that jar. And then when you fill that jar, you feel like you've got that trust, which can easily be broken. But then Mac reminded me that, even though the jar has all the pebbles in it, it can still be filled. You can still put sand in there. You can still put water in there. You can still put things like that, which in the clarifying for me is like our jar just keeps growing. It's not like it stops. Like trust is a growth process. So he called me on that because the way I said it made it sound like once it's full, it's done. But it's not, and it never is. And so I appreciate that. Ooh, somebody's putting in the chat some of this.
Um, Cathy,
Sonya's research.
yeah, they used to call me Sherlock Holmes when I was in HR. I research everything. But some of the latest studies are showing that it might be higher than 70-80%. There's a link I put in there. The last one was Apollo Technical. It's showing that 86% of employees and executives blame the lack of effective communication as leading causes for errors in the workplace.
That's one of the ones that I looked at, although I looked at more of the study than an article on it. Because this breaks it down even more. That talks about 76 professionals have been communicating across more channels. I'm going to keep this one.
Yeah, that's the Pumble link I sent you that's got that. But the last link with Apollo Technical, that's got more of the up-to-date 2026 statistics. So it goes along with what you were saying, though. It might be even higher now because of the way people are so isolated, and communication is really difficult for a lot of people because look at the younger generations coming into the workforce. They don't have those soft skills. They don't know how to communicate. And so that percent is going to possibly go higher until more people. It says 97% of Gen Z. Is that, what's after Gen X? Is that Gen Z and then the millennials? Or I could always forget.
Yeah, I get them mixed up, but it's Gen Z and then isn't it Gen X?
We're Gen X.
No,
The
we're badass
Oh.
boomers.
I'm not a boomer. I'm
Wait.
after you, Mac.
But this is the communication. You said we. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, and here's what I will say
Yeah.
when I report on studies and statistics, because you can find, I got to tell you something. If you want to find a statistic, if you want to say 2 out of 3 people do this, you will find info to support that. There will
Right.
always be something. So I have a tendency to hit a couple different. Yeah, I'm peeling back the curtain here as far as a communicator. I will look at 2 or 3 different studies, and then I average that number and say, that's why I went 70 to 80%. And it
Mhm.
was, and I've got it in my notes, it's 86% in medical, which is
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
So based on one article that I one study that I did. So I think you always got to be safe.
Mhm.
I think it's that I don't know that it speaks to trust when you get that ooh, 5 studies said this one, but the 6th one said the number that I want to say, so I'm going to say that one. That doesn't speak to trust.
Right.
So pull up a couple different studies, a little information on
Mhm.
this kind of stuff, and then kind of average it out, or even say 70 to 80%, um,
And
on
it's
average.
established you as the authority too on this topic you're
Right.
speaking on, which builds trust with your audience.
Mhm.
And your audience is going to tune more in because they're going to find out, well, why is it that way, or how can I help me be a better communicator? So, that thought process.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
I've been told that young people who are going out into the job market these days, many of them can't hold a job because they can't communicate, but they feel like they should be at the top of the ladder, like in weeks. They have no understanding that it takes time and work, and they've never been taught that. And I've had POWs say to me, we wanted our children to have everything. We were children of the Depression. We were fighting a war, and then we were prisoners of war. And he said, we wanted to give them everything, and we did. And so now they're trying to do it for their children and their children and their children, and it's not working.
No, because we're losing the skill set that brings us together as humans,
Yes.
right?
And the resilience to overcome something that happened, it just it doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, let's put it
It,
this way. We all have issues.
Yeah.
Like each generation has got a pocket of issues and things that they need to work on. We will never, and I remember telling this to my daughter, who's 20 now, but she still remembers it. But when she was old enough to know, when we were talking about, I had a previous marriage, right? There was a time where I was the second oldest, but I was the oldest daughter, and I was the second mother. So I didn't have much of a high schooler. I was cooking dinner, I was cleaning the house, I was making sure my siblings were alive. They're still alive. I did a good job, all of that. So I really didn't have. So as I was raising my daughter, and I'm like, I'm not going to do that to you, but guarantee you, I'm going to f you up in some other way. I really am. I'm going to do my best because I'm going to try to avoid the mistakes my parent made, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to make mistakes. And I can guarantee you that I will. And she actually remembered as she was in therapy a couple years ago because of something that I had said. Because I had told her, I'm your mother, I'm not your friend.
Mm.
That broke her.
Yeah.
Because if my mother is not my friend, how can anybody else want to be my
Be
friend?
my friend.
Mm-hmm.
But the
Yeah.
context she didn't understand.
She didn't get it. So we had to work our way
Yeah.
through that to say, I am not just a friend. Like friends come and go. I'm going to love you, all of that, and I'm going to be your friend, but I am not your friend in that you can dismiss me or I'm going to dismiss you with your bad
Right.
behavior. Like
Right.
that's not going to happen. It's like I'm your friend times 10. I am so much more. And when we were able to finally connect the dots, that doesn't mean to say every generation is going to foobar their children in
Right.
some form or fashion. But we're all trying to overcompensate from the mistakes that were made ahead of us. But all we
Right.
can do is try.
Yeah.
And that's it. As long as we're doing the best we can with the given situation, there is never going to be a perfect person, perfect conversation, perfect relationship. We've got to be resilient, like you talk about, Val. We all have to be. And the generations, yeah, the problems that they're having are unique to the environment that they're in, and we cannot dismiss that that environment is completely different than what we owned.
Right.
They're having problems we never had.
Right.
So we got to give each other grace and understand that, we all we all have stories. We've all made mistakes. And
Mm.
they're and we just got to keep going. We got to be resilient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love
Whew, I
that.
didn't see it going down that tangent, but oh, look at that.
That is a great path to be on.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop the recorder
Well,
now.
before we do, can I just end
Yes.
it with one message? So for those of you that are listening that weren't able to participate, and those that you are here today, I want you to please hear this, in that your voice matters. Your ability to question other people is not a weakness, it's a strength. To own your voice, your curiosity, and ask the questions that is going to get you to the other side to build that know, like, and trust. Don't be afraid to ask the questions, and it is actually required of you as a human to bring that. Own your worth, speak your truth, and ask that question. So, with that, I will stop.
Thank you. Thank
Wow.
you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Ooh, let's see if I can do it.